Hey everyone, Nathan here, Absurd Being. Alright, Phenomenology of Perception. This is the second part of video 14. And we're still in part 2, the perceived world. And we're still in the thing in the natural world as well. So this is the second part of this chapter, I guess we can call it, the thing in the natural world. In the last video we looked at perceptual constants and the way that the thing remains the same for us throughout different perceptions that we have of it, throughout different appearances that the thing takes before us. And now we're going to move to focus on the thing itself. So we're going to shift our attention a little bit to the intersensory thing itself. Now, this remains constant through a series of perceptions. Okay, good. So we've kind of established that. And Merleau-Ponty moves on to say that this intersensory thing itself, what the thing is, it's not a quale, first of all. So it's not reducible to qualia, our kind of first person experience of the thing. That's not going to be a full, complete description. And that's kind of the intellectualist approach, right? Nor, he says, is it a collection of objective properties. So it's not reducible to just properties that are out there inhering in some kind of substance. Nor is it reducible to a series of sensory givens. So we receive these impressions and putting them all together gives us the thing. So neither of those approaches gets us to the thing itself from Merleau-Ponty. So what is the thing? The way I've structured this video, basically, first of all, I'm just going to go through give a broad picture overview of the thing, what the thing is from Merleau-Ponty. And then I'm going to shift gears a little bit and we're going to look at a couple of other points regarding the thing. This was quite a difficult section to read, this whole thing. It was really difficult. It took me a long time to actually prepare for this video. So yeah, we're gonna do a little bit of jumping in this, but first of all, in this section, I'm just going to describe some broad features of what a thing is for Merleau-Ponty. So first of all, the thing is lived. So it's not something that we know primarily. It's not intellectual. I've said this many times in these videos, I think. So the thing is lived. He calls it a symbiosis, which is a nice word. And there's a quote which I won't throw up, but he calls this, he says the thing is a certain manner that the outside has of invading us, a certain manner that we have of receiving it. So it's very practical, very focused on the way we experience the thing as a thing. So not forgetting that the thing is out there as well. So it's not reducible to just the qualia that we have of it. So it's the symbiosis, and it's a manner that the outside has of invading us and that we have of receiving it. So that's a nice picture, and we'll come back to that idea at the end of the video, the way that there's this symbiosis going on, subject and object. So it's taken up then, in order to be lived in this way, it's taken up by the gaze or through a motor intention. We've talked a lot about those. And it's understood the way that we understand a new behavior. That is to say, by taking it up, by engaging with it. So that's, again, back to this idea of it's a very practical approach to the thing that Merleau-Ponty's taking. We understand it in the same way that we acquire new habits, not by reading about them, not by intellectualizing or conceptualizing, but by doing them, getting involved. And another aspect of this livedness of the thing is that it may not even appear as an object. And the example that he gives is a painting which has been removed. And when you go into the room, you know that something's different, but you're not sure what. Something's changed. You perceive a change, but you don't know exactly what has changed. So the thing is having an effect on you through its absence. So that's kind of cool too, right? So it doesn't always have to appear as an object, as presence before us. So the thing, and that ties in with what I'm saying here about it being lived. The thing is lived. It's something that we engage with. It's beneath this level of a subject over here and an object over there. There's like he says, symbiosis there. So natural perception, he says, isn't science, it doesn't posit objects out there to be observed. Rather, it lives among them. And that's this livedness that I'm talking about. So that's the first point. Second point is the thing is given all at once, as a whole. And he says the thing is that unique manner of existing of which its properties are a secondary expression. And we've talked about this many times before too, the way the thing appears as a thing before we break it down into its different properties. When we can do that, we can break it down into different perspectives. We can break it down by its properties, its size, its shape, its all those other things. But those are secondary reductions, he calls them, right? So the thing itself appears for us all at once. We grasp it as a whole. We don't cobble it together from a number of different perceptions. And it's the same with the body. We can think about the same. This is the same way we've described the body, not a collection of senses, but an integrated whole, which I live. You don't perceive yourself as a body. You don't perceive yourself as these fingers touching, as my ears hearing, my eyes seeing, and then putting it all together and getting a big picture. Everything is already that big picture. As soon as you're aware of it, as soon as you turn your attention to it, it's there. And then the secondary step is to break it down and pull those different senses apart. But that's the second point. It's given all at once as a whole. The third thing I have to say is the thing is apprehended when my experience achieves its highest clarity. And we talked about this in the last video. If a thing is too far away, it's just a vague outline or a mirage, Merleau-Ponty calls it. It's when it gets into that sweet spot, that just far enough away that we're able to see everything. The thing presents itself to us in its maximal clarity. I forget the term we used to describe that actually, but we did use the term privileged perception, optimal distance. That was the one. So that was for vision mainly, but this applies across all our senses, right? And he also says if it's only apparent to one sense, it's a phantom. Rather, for the thing to achieve its highest clarity, it appears to multiple senses. This is the intersensory thing. So it appears to multiple senses. We're able to get a fuller grasp of it, a fuller picture of what it is. So that's the third point. The fourth point, there are 5 by the way. The fourth point is the thing itself isn't hidden behind its appearances. And this is something that I've talked with a couple of people about regarding Sartre, and there is a tendency to think that there's something here hidden, that the thing itself, the in itself for Sartre, being in itself, or for Merleau-Ponty here, the intersensory thing itself. There's a tendency to see it as being this thing that we never get access to. It's hidden behind all of its appearances, like there's a core that we're not getting through to. An essence, that's another word that people like to use in this, and I think it's tied up with kind of a pseudo mystical way trying to see this. But that's not at all what either Sartre or Merleau-Ponty are on about. I've got a quote which I'll read for you, and then we'll look at it. So the sense of the ashtray animates the ashtray, and it's quite evidently embodied in it. The thing accomplishes this miracle of expression, an interior that is revealed on the outside, a signification that descends into the world and begins to exist there, and that can only be fully understood by attempting to see it there in its place. So there is no, we have to stop thinking about this inner and outer as if there's some kind of hidden essence to the thing. Like Merleau-Ponty says, the sense of the ashtray animates the ashtray. It's there in every appearance. It's not that we're missing the core, the real ashtray. All we're getting is some superficial image, mirage. It's quite evidently embodied in it. The sense of the ashtray is embodied in the ashtray. And I like that phrase, an interior that is revealed on the outside. That's how Merleau-Ponty describes the thing. A signification that descends into the world. And so we have this idea again that's been repeated many times. Sign and the signification are the same. There are no signs here pointing to some abstract concept or some idealized notion of the thing. And equally so, there isn't a hidden essence that we're not getting through to. The sense of the ashtray animates it and is embodied in it. It's there in every appearance. So the thing isn't hidden behind appearances, but it reveals itself through those appearances. And fifth, the last point here, and this was interesting, this was good too. The thing isn't just revealed by our bodies, rather it reveals to us our bodies as well. So that was quite cool. That's quite a nice way to think about it. If you think about how we know our bodies, this is another thing that Merleau-Ponty is always talking about, the body. And how we know our bodies is through engaging with things in the world. You know, if there was nothing to engage with, if we had nothing to get to involve ourselves with, then we wouldn't know. How would we know our bodies? How would we know our bodies as the experiencing things that they are, as the vehicles through which we can learn things and come to know the world and the things in it? We couldn't. Our bodies would have a completely different sense for us. And this is one reason why I'm not a huge fan of the brain in a vat kind of scenario. Right? There's the whole point of our bodies, and the only way we know our bodies is through engaging with the world. And so that's a nice point. The thing reveals to us our bodies. I've got a quote which I'll read for you, which Merleau-Ponty sums up this idea quite nicely, I think. We only grasp the unity of our body in the unity of the thing, and only by beginning with things do our hands, our eyes, and all of our sense organs appear to us as interchangeable instruments. The body by itself, or the body at rest, is merely an obscure mass. We perceive it as a precise and identifiable being when it moves itself toward a thing. Perfect. I don't think I need to say anything more. That's the exact encapsulation of that idea. Okay, so that's kind of what the thing is, a few broad ideas. We've talked about many of those before as well. So now I'm going to move into discussing the thing basically as an object pole to a subject. Right, so the thing appears and is constituted by the hold that my body has on it. And because of this, it's always burdened with what Merleau-Ponty calls anthropological predicates. And this is kind of the way I've described it. And this is why I kind of found this section so difficult, because we are going to switch from this. So this is, we've always linked the thing and the world to us as perceivers, and in particular to our bodies, and the way that our bodies reveal the thing, bring the thing before us, and let us engage with those things. But we're going to take a turn in the next section, and just before we do that, so this short section will it's just clarifying that up till now, and most of what I said before defines the thing in relation to us, and in relation in particular to our bodies. And because of that, Merleau-Ponty says it's burdened with anthropological predicates. So we see ourselves in everything, and everything exists for us. And because of this, there's a nice quote here. Merleau-Ponty says, it can never actually be in itself, because its articulations are the very ones of our existence, and because it is posited at the end of a gaze, or at the conclusion of a sensory exploration that invests it with humanity. To this extent, every perception is a communication or a communion, the taking up or the achievement by us of an alien intention, a coupling of our body with things. And that's how I've always talked about it, and that's how Merleau-Ponty's always talked about it up until now. This communion, this idea of a communion, and which was brilliant and perfect, because that's something that has tended to be overlooked. We've tended to see the thing as separate from us, subject object, that distinction, the Cartesian divide between mind and matter. And so it's been nice to get that idea that there's a communion here. There is this symbiosis, back to that word. The thing is lived, which means it's lived by someone, by us. And yeah, like I said, that's been missed, because we typically we've typically had this objective framing through which we see things, cutting the ties that exist between us. So we're left with a pure consciousness on one hand, and the thing, a pure thing, the in itself, on the other. So he's bringing those together in a communion. However, so that's the thing as an object pole to a subject. But there's another dimension to the thing, and that's where we're going to turn to next. The thing as other. So now we really are doing a 180, and it took me a long time to get my head around this and figure out that that's where Merleau-Ponty's going. Even though I've said, and this is, if you remember way back at the beginning, we talked about the phenomenal field, and how there was also a transcendental field that we were going to get to, and this was the impersonal, anonymous background. And we've talked about that in the past, in other videos. The anonymous, ambiguous, impersonal, but it hasn't really come to the fore until now, and this is where we're going to talk about the thing as other, the thing as not at the end of our goals, our projects, not at the end of a gaze of a perceiver, or the movement, the gestures of a body, the thing as it is in itself. So Merleau-Ponty says, even as the thing reveals itself to us through this in this way, through at the end of a gaze, with these anthropological predicates, it also keeps to itself. It presents itself as an in itself. And I've talked about this before, as density, the way that the thing we don't quite perceive all the way through the thing, it does hold itself back a little bit. Again, not in the sense that there's some hidden essence, there's not some special core that we're not getting to, but it holds itself back in such a way that it appears as a thing. If it didn't hold itself back, it wouldn't appear as a thing. So this holding itself back is necessary for it to appear as an object at all. So just bear that in mind. But it keeps to itself in this way. And on this topic, Merleau-Ponty says this dimension of the thing, this aspect of the thing, is usually hidden because we tend to engage with things. I'm not sure if he says this. I think I say this. We tend to engage with things superficially, although I don't mean that as a I don't mean that as a criticism of the way we normally engage with things, but we normally engage with things in the midst of our everyday dealings. We use things rather than see them as kind of objects. You know, we kind of surpass what they are in the direction of our goals and our projects, right? And our overall kind of understanding or picture, a referential context of things. That's kind of Heidegger terminology. So I'll give you a quote. "But the thing is unaware of us. It remains in itself. We will see this if we suspend our everyday dealings and bring a metaphysical and disinterested attention to bear upon the thing. The thing is then hostile and foreign. It is no longer our interlocutor, but rather a resolutely silent other, a self that escapes us." And so, like I said, this is now we've done a complete 180, that we're looking at the thing from this disinterested perspective. So we're taking it out of, I like that word, the referential context. That's not Merleau-Ponty, that's Heidegger, but that's the idea. We're taking the thing out of the context in which it has meaning for us. You know, usually when we use things, when I use this mouse or the keyboard, I'm not even aware of them. You know, I'm going beyond them. My intention doesn't stop at them. It stops at the words that I'm writing or the files that I'm opening on the computer. So the thing, it kind of disappears for me. I pass right over it. And that's what he's talking about. But when we have this metaphysical disinterested gaze, we bring that to the thing and focus on the thing itself, removed, detached from our everyday dealings, then it stands out as this just object, this mass, this other that is separate from me, that is resistant to my attempts to know it. You know, it's this little hardened kind of thing that I can't get access to. That it presents itself as foreign, as hostile, as a self that escapes us. And Heidegger talks about this as well. He calls it unhandiness. So it's that same idea that we've encountered before in being and time. Okay, so what is this thing then, this other that we now find ourselves faced with? So he says that the thing, as an object pole for a subject at the end of a bodily teleology, is a psychological definition. That's the one that's burdened with those anthropological predicates. And that approach is unable to fully capture the thing. Because another aspect of the thing is this its appearance as an other, as foreign. And the way that he says that it's foreign is not in the way that, like I said, there's a hidden essence to the thing that we never see, but in the way that it always overflows whatever sense it has for us. It's always more than just how we see it, how we relate to it, how we perceive it in our referential context. And he calls this the insurmountable plenitude of the thing. And the way I think about this is it's just like that. Like the thing is, it's able to be virtually anything we want of it. And the way we normally engage with things covers over that aspect, covers over this insurmountable plenitude, because we only see it in one way. We see it with one sense, the sense that it has for us at that moment, at that time. When I use my mouse, it has one function. It has a sense for me as something which I can use to control the cursor. But it has many other functions. I could use it as a paperweight. I can use it as a weapon if I have to throw it at someone. But all of these other senses that it might have in different contexts have been covered over. They've been passed over. And my example, actually, I used the mouse, which was quite good. But the other example I have is the tools in a workshed. This is going back to Heidegger. For the carpenter, the tools are completely different than the way they are for, say, the insurance agent who's there to assess the value for insurance purposes. These two different people view the tools in a completely different light. But neither is more accurate than the other, and one isn't right and the other's wrong. But the tools themselves are able to take on both senses. They're able to have both meanings. And so that I think is what Merleau-Ponty is getting at with this idea of insurmountable plenitude. And it's that which the thing holds back from us when we're engaged with it in our everyday dealings. So I've got a quote. "We now discover the core of reality. A thing is a thing because no matter what it says to us, it says it through the very organization of its sensible appearances. The real is the insurmountable plenitude. It is impossible to describe fully the color of a carpet without saying that it is a carpet or a woolen carpet, and without implying in this color a certain tactile value, a certain weight, and a certain resistance to sound." So the thing there, the insurmountable plenitude. And I think we can even go further than that, not just describe all of those, the sound as having tactile value and a weight and resistance to sound, but insurmountable in the sense that all of those things are changeable. All of those things can change depending on your context, depending on the way that you're approaching the thing. So that, again, that insurmountable plenitude, I think, is key in understanding how the thing is as this other, this foreign, hostile entity. But it is important that a thing, I quite like this too, a thing is a thing because it speaks to us through the organization of its sensible appearances. So, and that ties in with the insurmountable plenitude too, because it's capable of anything, but it organizes itself in a certain way for us. It organizes its sensible appearances in such a way that it takes on, it acquires the sense that we see in it. So this is all connected back to this idea of the thing as other through this idea of insurmountable plenitude. Man, I've said that many times, insurmountable plenitude. I hope I'm not making too much out of that, actually. But I don't remember Merleau-Ponty repeating it like I am. But still, I think it's key. I think it's important. So there's another important quote which I wanted to give you as well. "Each fragment of a visible spectacle satisfies an infinite number of conditions, and it belongs to the real to contract an infinity of relations into each of its moments." And again, I think this is just ramming home that idea. The thing as insurmountable plenitude, it satisfies an infinite number of conditions. But each moment or appearance contains this infinity. And that's why the thing itself is alien to us. Not because there's something in it that we don't see, but because every appearance, it's almost like there's too much in it for us to see. It's kind of the opposite problem. It's not that there's something hidden we're unable to get to. It's that the thing is just overflowing with senses, with meaning, and we have to kind of narrow it down. We have to pick out one particular sense, one way for the thing to appear for us. Okay, so that's that. So that was the other side, the thing as hostile, as foreign. And there are a couple of other points I wanted to make here before moving on. In the real, Merleau-Ponty talks about the sense and existence are one. And this is quite cool, and it's a nice twist on Sartre as well, which you'll see in a moment. But really, we're back to this idea of sign and signification. The sign is not different from the sense. The meaning is in the sign, the thing that is indicating, which is the thing itself. And this means, since sense and existence are one, it means that there's a depth to the real. The real has a kind of, I described it as density, but Merleau-Ponty talks about it here as depth. And he's contrasting this with imagination, which completely lacks this sense of depth. It lacks this sense of the real, right? You know, you can always tell the difference between something you imagine and something that's real. And he says that imagination doesn't respond to our attempts to vary our point of view. You know, when you move around an object, it doesn't hold itself in such a way that we're able to grasp different perspectives on it, because we're never geared into the imagination in the same way that we're geared into the real. When we imagine something, it presents itself to us the way that we imagine it. You know, it doesn't have any kind of independent solidity outside of us. The real stands out against our fictions because in the real, sense surrounds matter and penetrates it deeply. So that's the important idea. Sense here is in the real, and sense and existence come together in the thing, whereas they don't in imagination. And in imagination, he says, sense precedes existence. So the meaning of the thing precedes the thing itself, because you're creating the thing. You're giving the thing its meaning. So you have to have the meaning, the sense that you want prior to imagining it, obviously, or you wouldn't be able to imagine it. So in imagination, sense precedes existence. I like that. It's a nice way to think about it, as opposed to, again, in the real, where sense is existence. And like I said at the beginning of this little part, different from Sartre. Similar, but different. When Sartre says existence precedes essence and all of that, that's a slightly different angle that he's going down. He's approaching the subject from. Also, Merleau-Ponty compares this with a painting, where again sense precedes existence. There was an idea here. The painter painted the scene with a view to showing something, but they had that idea in mind. There wasn't something there first. So again, sense precedes existence. And so again, in painting, there is a lack of this depth that we find in the real, and things themselves. So I've got a nice quote here, which will just support this idea. The real lends itself to an infinite exploration. It is inexhaustible. This is why human objects and utensils appear as if placed into the world, whereas things are rooted in a background of non-human nature. For our existence, the thing is much less a pole of attraction than a pole of repulsion. We do not see ourselves in it, and this is precisely what makes it a thing. We do not begin by knowing the perspectival appearance of the thing. It is not mediated by our senses, our sensations, or our perspectives. We go straight to the thing, and only secondarily do we notice the limits of our knowledge and of ourselves as knowing. So there's quite a bit in that. Let's just have a quick look at some of what's there. So in human objects, sense precedes existence. Again, things that we make, they've been made for a purpose. We've made them with a design in mind, with a function in mind. So their sense precedes their existence. And this makes them different from the real or the natural world in this case. So now there's a slightly different distinction between human objects, human man-made objects, and real things, or not real things. Man-made objects are real, right? But between things in the natural world. Because things in the natural world aren't made for a purpose. We didn't give them, we didn't have a sense for them in mind before they existed. Rather, their sense and their existence appear at the same time for us. Their sense is existence, whereas with objects that we've made them with a goal, with a purpose, with a function in mind. So sense precedes existence, so they lack something that the natural world, things in the natural world have. They lack a little bit of density. They lack that insurmountable plenitude that means that they can be many different things. The thing is a thing because we don't see ourselves in it. It overflows the sense that we give to it. And that takes us back to that quote at the beginning of the section. A thing is a thing because no matter what it says to us, it says it through the very organization of its sensible appearances. That ties in with that. The thing overflows whatever sense we give it, whatever meaning it appears for us with in the context that we're perceiving it. And so what have I said? Read the last sentence, then explain them. I've got very detailed notes, that's good. So the last sentence. We do not begin by knowing the perspectival appearance of the thing. It is not mediated by our senses, our sensations, or our perspectives. We go straight to the thing, and only secondarily do we notice the limits of our knowledge and of ourselves as knowing. So this is going back to that idea that we don't grasp. When we grasp the thing, we don't grasp our perception of the thing. So it's a non-thetic apprehension originally. That's our original apprehension of the thing. It's non-thetic. And that secondary move whereby we see that we're looking at the thing through different perspectives, that the thing is appearing for us as kind of a series of different perspectives with a number of different objective properties that we are kind of piecing together to make the picture. That comes later. That's a secondary reduction. Okay, I think that's probably enough of that. So those are the two different aspects of the thing. The thing as that kind of psychological definition where it's the end of a goal that we have, the end of our gaze, something related to us, and this thing, the idea of the thing as an other, as hostile, I like that, a pole of repulsion. That's pretty serious. So he goes on now to give us an example, and we'll go through this one together as well, an example of a die. So here, Merleau-Ponty talks about seeing a die and like the little cube, and the way that it's presented in the natural attitude, he calls it. So to someone who has never interrogated their perception, someone who's never thought about how they're perceiving. When you see a die, how do you see it? What do you see? Well, he says they don't see projections or profiles first. They don't have a series of kind of still camera shots that they're piecing together to make a big picture, right? Rather, they just see the die from here, or from over there, or from that side, or from behind it. They don't see this front-on perspective and this oblique perspective and side-on profile and then put these all together. They just see the whole thing, the die itself, from those different perspectives. And every profile, every perspective emanates from a central cubeness, he calls it. So there's this central defining aspect of the die, which is cubeness, and that's in every profile. Every perspective we take on the thing has this element of cubeness present in it. So there's no sense of a series of accumulated perspectives. Nothing's broken down. But as soon as we take the perceiving subject into consideration, we begin a reductive process that, for Merleau-Ponty, empties the thing of its reality. So the first reduction, he says, we notice that it appears for me. So now it becomes the end of my teleology. It becomes something for me at the end of my gaze, something for me to roll when I'm playing a game. So it now becomes associated with me, no longer itself. It's no longer just for itself. Now it's for me. So that's the first reduction. The second reduction, the thing appears principally through vision. So it becomes structured predominantly by color, shadow, form, all of those things, those features that define our visual perception. Third reduction, we notice the perspectival appearance. So we notice that we can't see all the faces of the die at once. We see that some faces are distorted, some are on an angle, some appear, not as a proper square, but because we're seeing them from an angle, they appear distorted. We notice that next. And fourth, and finally, the final reduction, we feel that the sensation belongs to a modification of my body, not the thing itself. So everything becomes centered around me as the subject pole. And that's the kind of the danger of investigating and analyzing our perception too much. We end up losing the thing itself. It becomes kind of buried underneath, or it becomes lost because we become so dominant. We become the central figure. Everything then revolves around us, and you definitely get that impression from Sartre. The for itself, everything revolves around the for itself, and everything presents itself for the for itself, and everything has meaning only for the for itself. So this is definitely a departure from Sartre's philosophy. So I've got a quote which I'll read. The experience of the thing does not go through all of these mediations, and consequently the thing is not presented to a mind that would grasp each constitutive layer as representative of the higher layer, and that would construct the thing straight through. Before all else, the thing is in its evidentness, and every attempt to define it, either as the pole of my bodily life, as the permanent possibility of sensations, or as the synthesis of appearances, substitutes for the thing itself in its originary being an imperfect reconstitution of the thing with the help of subjective bits and pieces. And so that's basically what I was trying to say, but in a very compact and nice, articulate form. The natural attitude gives us the thing. We see the thing in all its evidentness. We grasp it straight away. But as soon as we attempt to define the thing, any attempt to define the thing ends up necessarily distorting it, replacing the thing with this substitute, this imperfect reconstitution, which then becomes burdened by those anthropological predicates. Everything becomes a reference to me, and that's what Merleau-Ponty was talking about there, with the defining the thing as the pole of my life, as the possibility of sensations, as the synthesis of appearances. Any way we approach the thing ends up robbing it of what it is. It ends up stripping it of something, of its own thingness, that thingness that it keeps back, that insurmountable plenitude. I'll say it once more. Okay, so this though then, and this is where it really, again, like it took me so long to figure this out, but it seems so kind of straightforward now. So we have kind of this paradox, and I think I'll discuss that in the next section. So this paradox, I'm pretty sure Merleau-Ponty doesn't call it a paradox, but it kind of is, and this is why it took me so long to come to grips with it. The paradox, what I'm calling a paradox, is that the thing seems to be this correlate of my body, even as it denies it. So we've talked about the thing as the way it has meaning for us, and now we've also talked about the thing as this hostile other, this pole of repulsion for us. How can we square these? How can we get something out of this that makes sense? And that's a good question. For Merleau-Ponty, the thing is, either one of those descriptions is incomplete. So the thing is never just the psychological definition. It's never that object pole for a subject. In the same way that it's never purely a thing in itself, a hostile other. Rather, it's both of these together. It's the thing and it's our experience of the thing. And those two are just inseparable. We can't pull them apart. So there's a short quote which is quite nice. I'll give it to you. The thing is a transcendence in the wake of a subjectivity, a nature that shines forth through a history. And I'll come back to that in a moment, actually. I'll bring that quote back in later, once we've discussed a couple of other things. So Merleau-Ponty goes back to realism here, talks about realism a bit. For realism, perception is a coinciding with a thing that is out there, that's separate from us. The problem with this is that it never really achieves what it claims that it does. So it doesn't explain how we can assimilate the thing so completely the way that we do, or how we're able to carry it into our histories. It becomes how it becomes so completely a part of us and our lives and our histories and our goals. Realism just can't account for that. If the thing is as separate, as objective as realism claims, how is it possible that we're able to have this communion, this level of symbiosis with the thing? And for Merleau-Ponty, realism is just inadequate here. It doesn't give us a proper account of this. So he says, in realism, the subject ultimately possesses nothing of the object. It can't. The thing is so different. It's completely external to us. It's pure in itself. As opposed to intellectualism, where the opposite is true. The subject dominates the thing completely. It sees all of it. It sees right through it. There's no opacity left. There's no what I call density anymore. You know, the subject just rides roughshod over the whole thing. It sees everything's spread out before it, completely open. And this, from this perspective, the thing loses its in itself nature. It loses its nature as that in itself, as something separate from us, as something that's not like imagination. It becomes more like something in our imagination, because we own it so completely, so thoroughly. And here, the opposite problem with realism. The thing loses its transcendence and its opacity. It loses its in itselfness. And so that leads me to my next point, which I think is the most important part of this video. And there are 3 quotes I'm going to give you. 3? Got 3? Yeah, there are 3. Let me run through them, and then we'll talk about them. We must live things in order to perceive them. But to live a thing is neither to coincide with it, nor to think it straight through. Instead, and this is the resolution, the perceiving subject must, without leaving his place or his point of view in the opacity of sensing, tend toward things whose key he does not hold in advance, and whose design he nevertheless carries within himself. He must open up to an absolute other that he prepares from deeper within himself. So that last quote, I think, is the key to understanding this whole section. When we perceive, we open up to an absolute other. The thing is this absolute other, it's this foreign thing. But in opening up, we nevertheless also prepare from within. So we have this, we're a part of what is going to eventually reveal or allow the thing to reveal itself as a thing. So it really is this blend of the subject and the object that doesn't eliminate either, that preserves both of them, that respects the thing as in itself, even as we appropriate it. So it's kind of walking a line between realism and intellectualism, where the thing is not just out there and we never get to it, or the thing disappears because we dominate it so much. But it's just such a, you have to think about it quite a bit. You have to think about it a while. But this is really that symbiosis that Merleau-Ponty was talking about at the beginning. The perceiving subject must, without leaving his place or his point of view, tend toward things whose key he does not hold in advance, and yet whose design he carries within himself. That's the point there. We tend toward the thing whose key we don't hold in advance. It's something independent of us. It has this hostility, this otherness, but we nevertheless carry that thing's design in ourselves. So we have the means by which this thing can appear as a thing for us. And so we open up to what is an absolute other, which is not related to us. It's completely foreign. But we open up in such a way that we prepare the other from within ourselves, or we prepare what's necessary for this other, this foreign thing, to enter into this symbiosis with us. So it's a really quite, I think, a unique approach to perception, and I think it's genius. It's such a great way to think about it, and it's not just that it's I like the sound of it. It's that it strikes me as really describing what happens in perception. It strikes me as a genuine account of how we perceive. So we come to this thing whose key we don't hold, but whose design we nevertheless carry within ourselves. So how does this happen? That's the next problem. how is this accomplished? How are we able to traverse this gap between us and this hostile other in such a way that the other is able to reveal itself as the object pole to my projects, my goals, my gaze. This is accomplished through the body, and this is the second key point, I think. The body is our link to the in itself nature of the thing, precisely because the body shares that same nature. The body is it has that same quality. It is part of the realm of the in itself. You know, we can see ourselves, our bodies, under the same aspects that we see things, as just masses, as just lumps of matter, something which is kind of foreign to us, hostile to us. And it's this then, but the body is kind of like, it straddles both. It's on both the side of the subject and also the side of the object. But because it straddles both, because it is on the side of the object, it's our link through to that side. So when he says we tend towards things whose key we don't hold, but whose design we nevertheless carry within ourselves, that design that we carry is in the body. It's through the body that we're able to approach the other, the thing as other, and to open it up for us so that we can appropriate it, so that it can become an object to my subject. So this is great. And Merleau-Ponty goes on to explain this with this quote: "There is a logic of the world that my entire body merges with, and through which intersensory things become possible. To have a body is to possess a universal arrangement, a schema of all perceptual developments and of all intersensory correspondences beyond the segment of the world that we are actually perceiving. Thus, a thing is not actually given in perception, it is inwardly taken up by us, reconstituted and lived by us, insofar as it is linked to a world whose fundamental structures we carry with ourselves, and of which this thing is just one of several possible concretions." And that's basically the whole thing there, right? To have a body is to possess a universal arrangement, a schema of all perceptual developments. That's what I was trying to get at. The body is our ticket to the other, to knowing the other, to experiencing the other, to bringing the other within a realm in which it's able to have meaning for us, to have sense, to gain a sense. And then he says at the very end of that quote, reconstituted and lived by us as a thing, but of which this thing is just one of several possible concretions. There's a reference to that insurmountable plenitude again. That makes the thing opaque, that makes it foreign and hostile, that gives it its in itselfness. So the way that, anyway, just getting back to the way that the body is our link, is our key here. He talks about the way that our gaze knows what a patch of light signifies. It's we don't have to translate anything, we don't have to interpret, but moving through our body, through vision, through touch, all of these things let us that it's the body which gets us to the thing. It's the body which allows us to come before the thing, or which allows the thing to come before us. So like I said, our bodies, our gaze just knows what a patch of light signifies, what it means for the shape of the thing, for the texture, what it does to the texture of the thing. Our gaze has that, what's the word? What does he say? Our gaze has the logic of the world. It understands the logic of the world intimately, so that as soon as we cast our gaze out there on the world, we're able to grasp it. It has meaning for us, and that's what the body does. In a way, it's like we are attuned to the world and things through our bodies. And that's not a word that Merleau-Ponty uses, but it's a nice word. It's like our body attunes us to things and brings them before us, or allows us to perceive them. Okay, and then, and this, going back to that quote from the beginning of this last part, a transcendence in the wake of a subjectivity, a nature that shines forth through a history. So now we can see what that means, that the thing is this transcendence, this foreign, this hostile other, which nevertheless appears in the wake of a subjectivity with, it appears as an object pole to a subject. It's a nature, it's something in itself, it's something foreign, hostile, that nevertheless shines forth through a history, through a personal history, through my history, that acquires meaning, sense, through my projects, through my life, through my goals, through my past experiences. So it's both of these. It brings both of these together, and that is, I think, the main part of this whole. For me, anyway, that was the revelation there. This last section, which I didn't get the first time, the first or the second time through Phenomenology of Perception. This only clicked for me when I was preparing for this video. So he then goes on to talk about animal life and bringing back this idea of the Umwelt and Welt, which we talked about way back, I think in the first video maybe. So he says that animal life, again, is restricted to the Umwelt, which is this personal milieu. It's where the thing is just something for me. Everything it is directed towards me. It has meaning and value only for me. And what this means is that animals can only live the thing, or they can only live the thing. They only have this one means of understanding the thing, one means of approaching the thing, and that's as a concrete signification. It has to appear in a concrete context, or else it doesn't appear for them at all. It has to appear with some kind of functional, in a functional context. It has to have meaning for them as something they can use, or it just doesn't exist. Whereas human life, however, rather than being restricted to this Umwelt, it opens onto a Welt, a world. And this world is then bigger than this Umwelt, which is that's that personal milieu. The Welt is impersonal. The Welt is something that is not related to me, not dependent on me, it doesn't refer to me. And that's the thing as hostile, the thing as an other. And that's, like I said, the thing understood as in itself, not as related to us. And we can even go so far as to treat our own bodies in this same way. That's the power that we have here. That's what distinguishes us from animals who are stuck in this Umwelt. Everything has concrete meaning. We're able to see things, even our own bodies, that even that, to that extent, we're able to treat our own bodies as objective things, as things that have no deeper meaning, that have no deeper sense. And how is it possible that we're able to do this? How is it that we have this, that we open onto a Welt instead of just being trapped in this Umwelt. Merleau-Ponty says, human life understands not only some definite milieu, but rather an infinity of possible milieus, and it understands itself because it is thrown into a natural world. And that's the idea there. So how this is possible, that we have this impersonal world, which is full of things in themselves, things as others, is only possible because we are thrown into a natural world. And that is what we're going to talk about in the next video. But for now, summary. So okay, in this video, we've looked at the thing in general. First of all, we started with a kind of description of what a thing is, and we looked at an example of a die. The thing is lived, so it's a symbiosis, and that's originally how we see it. We don't see it as a series of appearances or different perspectives. It's also given at once, so it's a complete whole that we grasp at once. The cubedness was something that was always present through every appearance, right, in the die. And it's not hidden behind appearances, so there isn't a little core thing which is hiding from us. It's not an essence that we're unable to grasp, we're unable to get to. But we looked at two aspects of the thing. First, the thing as an object pole, and under this framework, we talked about it being burdened with anthropological predicates. And basically this is the Umwelt way of seeing the thing. The thing always appears for me. It always appears kind of through my own lens, through my own projects, through my own history. That's where its meaning, that's where its sense comes from. The second aspect of the thing was the thing as in itself. And here we talked about that insurmountable plenitude. The thing is in itself because it's capable of being anything. It has an infinity of possibilities locked up within it, which are contained in every single appearance. And it's in this sense that the thing is hostile, that the thing is foreign or other to us. And this is also that Welt perspective, where the thing is impersonal and not related to us. And this last, the second aspect, the thing as in itself, is possible only because we are thrown into a natural world. And we're going to look at that in more detail in the next video. And another important point, this whole symbiosis, the way that the subject and the object are able to commune the way that they do. We're able to bring these two aspects, the thing as an object pole for us in our lives and the thing as in itself, bring those together when we perceive, is all accomplished through the body. So the body is our link. It's kind of our secret weapon. It's the in itself that we have on our side, which lets us understand all these other in itselves. And we talked about the gaze being one particular way that the body does this for us. Okay, so that's this video. Like I said, the next video we'll look at the natural world, and hopefully you got something from this. I definitely did. It took me a long time to figure this out, to get my head around this, but yeah, I think I'm pretty comfortable with where it is so far. We'll see how we go in the next video. Anyway, thanks for listening as always, and I'll catch you shortly.